thanks very much, folks. And it's always good to be at these events when we have, I think, bring together people from across the broad left to have always very civilised and good-natured discussion. And long may that continue. I think we live in really unprecedented times, important times, because we see the political class in meltdown and crisis. And if we look at the House of Commons, the antics we've seen there over the last few months, it's quite incredible. I don't know whether to compare it to a zoo or a public school dormitory where they've overdosed on Vimto. It just seems to be madness that's going on down there. And I've never been so glad that I've never ever wanted to work in that place, because I think being in there at this time would be absolutely hell. And if we reflect across the world, the political outlook is pretty chaotic and grim, I have to say. If you were expecting me to give you an uplifting contribution this morning, then I would advise you to make your way to the exit, because we look at what's happening with Trump. I spent 3 weeks in America recently. It's wall-to-wall coverage of Trump on every news channel, and it's the same format. They go to a press conference that Trump hosts, and then he answers loads of questions. Then they go back to a panel in the studio who tell you all the lies that Trump's just told in his press conference. And then they analyse the lies and tell you why they're lies again. And this is repeated 24 hours a day. It's utterly incredible. And yet there's a whole group of people who are lapping this up. That's just the way of the world at the moment. I couldn't believe watching it that, if some politicians of yesteryear had told even 2 or 3 of those lies, they would have been gone. But it's every day with him. It's absolutely every day. And we can see that model being replicated in Boris Johnson, because he's just following suit. I actually wonder if his name is Boris Johnson, because it's got to that basic level that he can't answer a question honestly and openly. If we look across other areas, we see people like Bolsonaro in Brazil, and Orban, and Le Pen, and Wilders, and Farage, and they all try to present themselves as anti-establishment characters. These are the bloody establishment. These are what they exist for. And so we see the political world, I think, in a state of flux. And if we reflect that back on what's happening in our own country, the whole issue around where the balance of power lies, we can see what the game is. The game is to divide working people. It's to divide working class people in order to eliminate that opposition, because we see things like the tax cuts for the rich and the benefit cuts for the poor. We see attacks on workers' rights. I mean, the trade union bill that went through Parliament was so bad. David Davis said it was reminding him of Franco's Spain. Utterly incredible that someone, a senior Tory, would say that. We see those cuts to disability benefits that set the able-bodied against the disabled. We see sanctions, the rape clause, the bedroom tax. We see food bank use soaring, the hostile environment against migrants, the rise of the far right. And all of this is setting people, dividing people against each other. We've seen it as the independence question plays out in Scotland, and we see it as Brexit plays out. And this plays into their hands, because the more that people are divided, it diverts attention away from other areas that are absolutely in a state of crisis. The public services are in a state of crisis. If you look across public services in Scotland, whether that be the NHS, whether that be education, whether that be local government. I mean, Margaret, it's Western Barnsley, you're from mine. I could weep at what we see happening in local government, having been a councillor. And my own local authority only has a budget of 450 million and has 100 million taken away from it. 100 million pounds out of 450. It's absolutely incredible. And if there's a failing of the Labour movement at this time, it's not to defend local government as robustly as we should have done. And part of the reason is that is because we've got a certain group of people who, irrespective of whatever the Scottish Government does, they'll cheer them and wave a flag. And yet our public services are in meltdown. and it's disastrous for our communities. If we look at some of those headings, if we look at the NHS, and we see waiting times growing dramatically. I had reason to deal with someone recently who was going through a mental health crisis. 10 months to wait for a psychologist appointment. If you're in crisis, you need help that day. 10 months' time, you might be dead. We see a mental health crisis playing out on our streets. I was met with a group in West Lothian on Friday, Mental Health Advocacy Service, and they were talking through the impact of those cuts on their clients. People who got a service from the council that was free, they now have to pay for it. So they get, one woman says, I've got housing support. Somebody came to my house 3 hours a day to help me live. But I now have to pay, I think she said £68 a week for that. So she doesn't come anymore. And she said, I'll probably be back in hospital in the next couple of weeks. And the cost that then that goes on to the NHS, it's absolute madness what's going on. And education is supposed to be the Scottish Government's top priority. Education is Nicola Sturgeon's mantra, and yet they've had to abandon their education bill. We see exam pass rates falling 4 years in a row in some exams, and we see the division between the rich and the poor educational divide growing. And it goes on. In the prison service, been working with the Prison Officers Association recently, we see a staffing crisis in prison, we see a drugs crisis in prison, and we see a demoralised workforce. So if you can go across all of these different public services, look at the issue in this city, yards from us, out there. We have got an HIV outbreak in this city that's the biggest in Europe. The biggest in Europe. And we have a drugs crisis a drugs deaths crisis that's the biggest in Europe. 1,200 of our fellow citizens dying on the streets because drugs policy is a complete and utter disaster. The war on drugs has been a complete abject failure. We hear politicians shouting about but at least we're better than England, or at least we're better than Wales, or whatever. That should not be the bar at which we set ourselves. We've got to aspire to be much better than that. And I said it was doom and gloom, and some of this is, absolutely is, but there is glimmers of hope because people are fighting back. If we see people fighting back, we see every week examples of that. So the RMT, if we see them, the work that they're doing, brilliant union, take no shit from nobody because they fight back. And Phil's here, and Phil will tell you the work that we've been doing with the RMT. But I'll tell you what, long may it continue. This week the RMT were absolutely brilliant, coming to Parliament, putting pressure on politicians and saying, bring the railways back into public ownership. And it was an abject failure with the SNP lining up with the Tories to continue their build of franchising. Anybody who travels on the trains will tell you how bad it is. And I'll speak to a train driver the other day who said in his 30 years on the railways, this is the worst it's ever been, the worst employer. Abellio went through 40 directors and 7 HR directors. That's how bad they are. And we had the chance to turf them out this week, and sadly the Tories and SNP joined together to stop that. We see Unite fighting back in local government, we see them fighting back in the energy sector, in transport, in manufacturing. GMB with the ASDA workers fighting back. The CWU are out for a balloting action at Royal Mail. We see ASLEF fighting back on pay and conditions, Unison in local government and in the health service. The FBU doing some brilliant work on local government cuts and on issues around Grenfell. We see organisations like Extinction Rebellion fighting back. And I think if you want to see evidence of the failure of capitalism, it's on what's happening with the environment, where we sit on the brink of, we're in the middle actually, of an environmental disaster, and the answer from some is to just continue as we are going. Trump wouldn't have any environmental standards. He would just continue to abuse the environment and burn every tree and pollute every watercourse. But people are fighting back. We see organisations like Better Than Zero fighting back, PCS fighting back on public sector pay. And a lot of that has been done through organising, through educating people, through direct action, through parliamentary pressure. And I have to say to people who are involved in different organisations and groups, do not forget to use your parliamentarians to put additional pressure on, because that's when we work, when the community, when you work on the ground, but we also bring the parliamentary pressure, then the combination of those forces can bring about change. And I would highlight, I know Davey and others are here, the blacklisting campaign, where we did that in Scotland, where we took parliamentary action, but we also had action, direct action, very often out in the community, and amongst those, some of the worst of those blacklisted employees. And you mentioned surveillance. On the back of the blacklisting campaign, I called for a public inquiry in Scotland on the actions of undercover police officers. Now, there is a UK inquiry ongoing at the moment, but Scottish victims have no access to that UK inquiry, and the Scottish Government refused to have a parallel Scottish inquiry, despite the fact that Scots were disproportionately highly represented amongst those who were blacklisted and under surveillance. So on the mainland UK, the only people who have no access to a public inquiry over this is people of Scotland. And as a sop to that, the Scottish Government asked Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary to do a review of undercover policing in Scotland. So the police inspected the police, and any idea what the answer would be? We didn't have a problem in Scotland. Well, I'm sure we all zip up the back. So people are fighting back, and they're fighting back on a whole number of fronts. But what I would say is that we need to work together with our eye on the bigger prize. And I think the bigger prize is an incoming radical Labour government under Corbyn that would change that balance that we're talking about in the greatest way since 1945, without any shadow of a doubt. Imagine a Labour government with a £10 an hour living wage for people now, investing I think an additional 40 billion in Scotland over 10 years, with fair taxes, with energy and post and rail, and big pharmaceutical production under public ownership. Imagine the difference that would make. John McDonnell's Green Industrial Revolution, reform of public procurement to make that money work for us. A 4-day week. A 4-day week is a realistic prospect. Free bus travel, as Richard's referred to. The end of the disaster of universal credit and the expansion of public transport, a mass house building programme, caps on private rents. That starts to shift that balance back in favour of working people. If you have that agenda, that broad agenda, taking on the vested interests in the powerful and the wealthy and redistributing that power and wealth back in favour of working people. So people are fighting back. This isn't called the struggle for nothing, and we all must continue with it, and that prize is a Labour government introducing policies like that. And when the election comes, as it is coming, we better all be out there fighting for it. Thank you.